How y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about taxes, which is usually a very boring subject. So I'm not going to read any articles. What I am going to do is put a reading list in the description for people who might be more interested in this type of thing. But I am going to just basically ramble on about taxes. But I have a couple of subjects I want to discuss here. For starters, for a lot of people, I want to talk about what a tax is. Second, I want to talk about self-ownership. Three, I want to talk about whether taxes help or harm. Four, I'm going to talk about how, and this is going to be a spoiler, all taxes harm. And five, I'm going to talk about the legal ramifications of taxes in the United States. I might talk about these things out of order, but just follow me here. I'm trying to weave a narrative. But this is coming out of the presidential debate where all I heard was people talk about increasing taxes. So what is a tax? In the old days, a tax was simple. The king owned all of the land in his realm. So the king of Egypt or the king of Rome or whatever would own all of the land, and he would demand payment from the usage of that land. So he would kick the land down to a landowner, which may have any kind of name, and then that landowner would then lease the land to a farmer who would then farm, mine, whatever the case may be. And then the around tax time, the landowner would go to the farmer, collect a tax, and then the landowner would then kick tax to the king. So it was a tiered system where the guy on the bottom was getting screwed. He had to do all the work, but the guys above him were the ones who got paid. This is what we mean by taxation is theft. Because when we go to the next step, what is self-ownership? Self-ownership is that I own my own body, and therefore I own whatever my body produces. And if something is owed to me, if I worked for it, it's mine. So if I went to work and worked for $5 an hour, I should get $5 for every hour that I worked. So if I worked 3 hours, I should get $15, correct? Right. But that's not what happens when you tax, right? That's not what happens. It's I work for $5 an hour, but I get taxed. So I walk home with $12 when I worked for 15. That is theft. Okay, you stole $3 from me, right? This happens all the time. This is routine. This is why people who say, well, we want to increase the minimum wage, and people who want to increase government are being counterproductive. They're full of it because you're stealing from these people by increasing government. So yes, that's why you have to continue to increase the minimum wage, because you're stealing their wealth through taxes, or you're stealing their income through taxes, especially. But there's numerous other taxes. There's sales tax. There's there's land taxes, property taxes. There's taxes on capital gains tax. That's the tax you may get from dividends from your investments. There's a myriad of taxes in the United States. There's probably even more in Europe. So then you get the idea when people start seeing that their income, their wealth, their property or whatever is being taxed and the value of it is being stolen, they tend to get a little bit upset, right? And then what happens is you will have these progressives, these people who say, oh, no. You have to understand, we have to tax people because if we don't, then we won't have schools. We won't have roads. We won't be able to pay the police. We won't have judges. We won't have all of these wonderful things. We won't be able to have the bus system. We won't have any of these things because we won't have the money. We need to tax you in order to help other people. We need to help everyone. Sure, some people can't afford to buy a gun. Some people can't afford to have a private car. Some people can afford to have a house. But other people need public accommodations. They need a public house because they can't afford a house. They need all of these different programs. We need to help these people. And therefore we will tax you to help these people. Same folks will then turn around later on and say, you know what? Jeff Bezos makes too much money. We need to tax his income so that we can make more money from him. You know what? We don't like that people are getting fat, so we're going to create the sugar tax. We're going to tax all pops, or what some people call colas, or cokes, or whatever the case may be, or beverages with high sugar content. We don't want people smoking, so we're going to increase the taxes on cigarettes. We're going to increase the taxes on prostitution, on gambling, These are called sin taxes. All of these things means that these items, if you purchase them, they cost more. It's more than just a sales tax. It is sales tax plus something else. So if the sales tax is 6%, like it is in Michigan, it may be 6% plus if you buy cigarettes. Maybe 6% plus if you buy in New York or something like that, where they may have had played around with these sugar taxes. So they may say, well, you have to pay more if you buy fast food tax. They played with that in Detroit too. Kwame Kilpatrick tried that. It didn't work. But these things never work because they increase the cost of items. This goes to what I mean by all taxes deter. All taxes cause harm. If they say they want to increase a tax for the reason to stop something, like stop smoking, they'll tell you if you increase the cost of cigarettes, it'll deter people from buying it. It's like, yeah, that's true. It will happen. But then they'll say, we need to help black people build generational wealth, but we're not going to get rid of the property tax. Instead, we're going to increase property taxes. So then what are you saying here then is that you don't want black people to create generational wealth because you don't want them to buy property, right? Because property taxes increase the cost of property, doesn't it? I mean, we just laid that out here, right? Increase the cost of something to deter people from buying it. If you increase the cost of property, people will not buy it. So if you increase the cost of property, black people cannot afford it. Therefore, you have destroyed the concept of generational wealth in black America. So if you really wanted to help black America, you get rid of the property taxes. By the way, Detroit has some of the highest property taxes in the country, in the United States. And it is very poor for that very reason. Property taxes. But you're not allowed to have that conversation with people because then they'll say, oh no, the property taxes are tied to schools. They'll quickly jump back to the help. Oh, property taxes help pay for this. Property taxes help pay for that. It's like, who cares? You're talking about helping people with generational wealth. That's supposed to be the goal. But then you're increasing property taxes and then people are losing their houses. Grandmas and grandpas are losing their house, which is an asset that they could use to help their kids go into business or help their kids go into college or whatever. But all taxes cause harm. It's a disincentive. Okay, that's the point. The point of a tax is to disincentivize things. They started increasing the cost on. They wanted to. I think Elizabeth Warren in the United States played with the idea of adding a tax to every trade on the stock market to disincentivize people from trading too much in the stock market. It's like these people play with taxes as a weapon, and then they try to produce taxes as a good thing. It's like, no, it's the same. It's the same item. It's like they try to tell you that, oh yeah, a knife can cut your tomatoes for your salads, or they can stab you in the chest with it. But they seem to just do more stabbing you in the chest with it because there really is no real benefit to taxes other than paying for very basic social services and when it comes to the government. But then they'll increase the government. So then they'll turn around and they'll say, well, yeah, we like schools and we like roads, we like police, but then we got to have all of these other people. We got to have all of these regulators that go into mom and pop shops to see whether their building is up to code. We need all those people. We need all of these other folks. We need people who to go through your ledger and see whether you are really making the same. You're paying people fairly. So we need labor government. You need, and then there's it just starts to expand and expand and expand. You got all this government now where you have some governments have 7-8 different departments at minimum. You may have a labor department, you have human resources. On top of just the criminal justice system, you'll also have water and sewage. You'll also have all of these different departments, and all these department heads are $100,000 heirs. Where these people make hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. Yeah, that means you have to increase your taxes, right? And then if they're unionized, that's even more money you have to spend. So, but where does this money come from? And a lot of people, I may have skipped over this, but the government does not get money from anywhere else. It has to make money from taxes. That's where the government gets money from. Now in the United States, they do have a money printer where you can print money. Like, okay, most countries can do that, but that just causes inflation. Okay, theoretically, it just causes inflation. But you have to increase taxes in order to pay for things. Now, when they say something like they're going to increase taxes on, instead of they'll try to play word games where they'll say, we don't want to increase taxes on the middle class, quote unquote. Nobody knows what that means. The middle class it's what's called a floating signifier. It is a set of words that does not have a precise meaning. What is the middle class? Nobody has any idea. But just like they have no idea who the wealthy is, they'll just create a system out of their ass and say, oh well, every $200,000, is wealthy. And it's like, okay, if you're not in that tax bracket, you don't care. But there are other people who are in that tax bracket who are like, wait a minute, I live okay, but I'm not, Jeff Bezos. He's had like multiple yachts. So what you'll have with the Democrats usually in the United States is they'll pick, somebody who's fabulously wealthy, like Jeff Bezos, and Bernie Sanders will say something like, we want to create the Stop Jeff Bezos Act, as if he's doing something criminal or illegal. But basically what they're trying to say is we want to increase his taxes. So if you increase his taxes, right, you're not really going to really bother his wealth, because usually his wealth is tied up in other things. But what they're going to do is they're going to cause him to increase the costs of his items that he sells on Amazon. So this taxes that he can kick those down the road. If you increase Jeff Bezos' taxes, he's just going to turn around and increase the cost of his items on Amazon, which means that you're going to pay more money in order to get the same product you would have gotten cheaper if they had not increased his taxes. And that's just common sense, and it makes sense for him to do so. And these type of things happen literally all the time. Whenever they talk about increasing the taxes on the rich, what they end up doing is just increasing the cost of whatever the rich produces to the consumer. And what they do, how they manage to do this, and that's also very it's also a horrible thing, because you will have big spots like an Amazon or like Walmart. Walmart is number one with this. Well, Walmart would get a sweetheart deal on taxes. They're multinational. They exist in other countries. So Walmart will come in, build in one place, and they'll say, oh, we can offer these same groceries, these same electronics that a mom and pop store has, but we can offer them at a lower price. And that's true, they can, because they have sweetheart tax deals. Because, Walmart is known for having these lower costs, these lower prices. They can benefit because the mom and pop store usually has to pay more in taxes. They usually have to pay more in property taxes. Usually that's what it is. Even though Walmart may pay more in payroll taxes because they're a bigger shop, so they may hire more people. And they may say, okay, well, we're going to tax you for every employee that you have. So Walmart may have 50 employees, while a mom and pop store may have 3. But in that case, because the mom and pop store is small, they may have to pay more in property taxes than Walmart, even though Walmart takes up more space. I know that's confusing, but that's the point of taxes, is to confuse the hell out of you. So, but ultimately, Walmart takes advantage of taxes. That's what they do. These companies will get these sweetheart deals. They'll come in low to no taxes. They'll build, and then they'll undercut all the local businesses. And then once the local businesses are dead or dying, now the government and the citizens are reliant on Walmart. So this is a big problem. There's something else I want to discuss too, but I can't think of it on top of my head. I talked about it in a previous incarnation of this video. But let me give me a moment to think. So then you also have, and I just remembered it's the progressive tax. So in Michigan, well, not in Michigan, but in the United States, they have what's called a progressive tax. And what that means is I think I just talked about it, is that, they say we'll increase the taxes not on the middle class or on the poor, but on the wealthy. So what you have is different tax brackets will pay more in taxes. And that's horrifying. It should be a violation of the Constitution, but for some reason it's not. And that's usually where our instances come in, is that, taxes are something that is very unequally applied. And when it comes to people, it does seem like the poor pay more in taxes, because they need and use more services. Usually the poor areas, the poor cities, they use more taxes because they want things like uh, buses, like the private or public transportation. They may need more public schools, so they'll pay more in taxes and get worse outcomes than the rich people do. And this is, of course, rich people pay more in taxes, but they have private schools. They don't have buses rumbling up and down the street because everybody has a car in their neighborhood. They may not even have to pay that much in property taxes because they may have smartly have already gotten rid of their property taxes. They may have also smartly have gotten rid of the sales tax in their city or area. So, but it depends on the city, depends on the state, because I know some states, like Florida, does not have an income tax, but they may have a high property tax. And people play with these things. There's also value added taxes, which is something I know is big in Europe, where, heaven forbid they start bringing those things to the United States. I've heard people talking about it. I think Bernie Sanders and all these socialists who just want to have government take over everything. All of those people essentially love all of the Swedish, English style tax systems, where it's basically just a labyrinth of taxes that take up an exorbitant amount of money. And again, the money can only come from you and me, right? You and me produce something, the government comes and takes it. That is why we say taxation is theft, because everything that we earn is taken from the government. Now, one of the things is just kind of a little history lesson for how taxes became constitutional. Now, the United States didn't have an income tax. This is for the United States, of course. We didn't have an income tax. We didn't always have an income tax. Income taxes were things that were dabbled. They were almost always tied to war, because one of the things was taxes used to be voluntary. Like, taxes used to be voluntary, but it used to be an issue where they were inefficient. And, what I mean by that is you would put out a word that we need to bring up X amount of money to go to war. But it would take forever. And then because it was voluntary, some people would be like, nah, I ain't paying that tax. I don't want nothing to do with it. And then you would have a half-formed military or no military at all, and it was a threat to national security and all that type of stuff. So they would have temporary, or what they call sunset income tax. The sunset laws in the United States means that there are laws that have a definitive start date and definitive end date. So they may say the law will kick in at this point in time and then end at this point in time. So they would have income taxes for the purpose of a war, and then it would end. But then in 1912 there was an income tax for the I think it's the War of 1812. Well, I forget who we were fighting. I think it might have been England again, but or Spain. It was one of the two. But there was an income tax then, and then it was repealed after the war. And then in 1861 there was an income tax for the Civil War, so that the Union brought upon an income tax to fight in the Civil War. That was also repealed later on. So we ended up getting caught with the income tax, which is insidious, by the way. Like, a lot of people say they don't really mind sales taxes, because sales taxes are voluntary. You could choose not to spend your money. Property taxes, I'm not so sure how property taxes usually not as hated by Austrian economics. I'm pretty sure all taxes are hated, but people don't really go as hard on property taxes as they probably should. Like, property taxes are horrible, but usually people have a hard on for the income tax. Now, the income tax was enshrined in the United States Constitution through the 16th Amendment in 1913. So it pretty much, which is President Woodrow Wilson, I believe. So we're screwed. We are stuck with the income tax. And then, of course, from there, it became a progressive income tax, which means that if you make more money, then you have to pay more in taxes, which is horrible. It's unequal. But that is my spiel on taxes. And so whenever you hear somebody's talking about doing anything, government cannot do anything without increasing taxes. Because unless people are going to work for free, the government has to pay. If the government is going to pay, they're going to pay in taxes, which means they're going to have to take more money from you and me. Now, I'm of the opinion that if people had to sit down and write a check to the government for everything that is on their check stub, they would revolt. It's a psychological thing. Like the people who sit down and have to actually do math to figure out what their taxes are, they are vehemently against taxes. Okay, those are usually the people who hate taxes more than anything, and taxes are the most important thing that they vote for or vote on. Is because they have to sit down and calculate how much of their money they have to take out of the bank to give to the government. Poor people, or a lot of them don't see the money that they take, that the government take. They just get a check stub that says negative, 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 and then they have negative for Social Security, negative for Medicare or Medicaid or whatever, negative, 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 child support and all that stuff. And then they just say, okay, well, your gross, or I forget how it goes, but whatever it is that you made was $400, but you walk around with $212 in pay. It's like, well, 50% of your almost 50% of your paycheck is gone in taxes. But you're like, oh, well, that's cool. It's like, no, it's not cool. Like, it's robbery. When you look at how much you made per hour versus how much you actually got after taxes, that's robbery. And it doesn't take much more than that in order to get people to understand how important taxes are. Is get your check stub, circle how much you do the math. You know how much you make per hour. Write down how much you make per hour times the amount of hours you worked. That's your how much money you're supposed to get. And then look at your paycheck and see if that's what you got. It's not. You have to pay income tax. It's evil. It's horrible. And then it's the same thing if you go to the store. If you want to know you're going to go get a $5 footlong or a Little Caesars $5 pizza, you already know you can't just walk in there with $5 and say, here's $5. Give me the pizza. You have to have $5.30, dog. That's kind of how it is. And if people know this, if they actually sat down and think about it. But most people have been attuned to turn their brain off when it comes to taxes because it's boring. It's a boring subject. But you don't understand how people are stealing from you. They're stealing your value. They're stealing the value of your work. They're stealing, the value of everything around you. Your house, everything. And at the threat of a gun too, because if you don't pay income taxes, you'll get arrested. You don't pay property taxes, they'll take your house from you. And that's usually the most insidious thing about taxes, and not just that they exist, is that there's confiscation. It's not like. And of course, in the United States also, there's and I guess in England or in Europe as well, they supposedly have got rid of debtors' prisons. So if you can't pay taxes, or if you can't pay a debt, you don't go to jail anymore. But that's only if you can't pay a debt to a private institution. If you can't pay the government, they'll arrest you. Okay, so because Wesley Snipes got arrested because he couldn't pay the government. Other people have been arrested because they couldn't pay the government. So. Taxes are like one of the few debts that you could actually go to jail for if you can't pay it. And they will levy the hell out of you. And that's what makes it evil. That's what people would say, taxation is robbery, taxation is theft, or they say taxation is extortion. These are typical libertarian arguments by saying that taxation is essentially a crime. And it should be, but of course, it's the United States and whatever, but at least it's not Europe, because it's really bad in Europe. But the general idea is that if you work for something, it's yours. That should be the general idea of a tax or any type of economic system. That if you don't own what you created, then how can you? What's the purpose of creating it? This is what I mean by taxes are a disincentive. People will not. Again, what's the purpose of working if you can make more money without working? Then what's the point of working? If you're gonna make $400 an hour and 150 of it's gonna get taken in taxes, that sets you behind. There's no point to working. It's hard to argue why people should continue to work. And again, what I said about taxes are a disincentive. That's the point. At some point for everybody, taxation becomes a disincentive, and that's why they have all these deductions and all this type of stuff. And I don't want to get into all that. But if you like this video, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of taxes in your area. What is the tax rate in your area? I'm really interested in knowing what the taxes are in all these areas. And uh, now there are these things called millages. That's what I wanted to talk about. A millage is a tax that, well, monies that go from that you vote on that goes to other things. Like in Detroit, we had we had a couple of millages for museums. So the Detroit Institute of Arts is funded by millages. So it's Detroit, Hamtramck, Royal Oak, and a couple of other cities. We actually pay a piece of tax to pay for the DIA, and we can get in for free. Now that is a little bit more democratic because it was voted on. A lot of people still was like, no. So, like, I don't want to pay for that. I don't even like the museums. I mean, I only go to the museum because I pay for it now, so I've become cultured. But anyway, I'm kidding. I was going to the museums anyway. But, and then I also voted against it. I voted against all taxes. But anyway, it's usually only, but nah, I don't vote for taxes, no. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Feel free to hit the Cash App if you feel like it. If not, don't worry about it. But I'll talk to you guys later.